So, hi everybody. We've gone through balance sheets. We got to make profits before we do anything else. You saw the vision from Mr. Biyani, and you've seen costing, which is very important before you go to the next step. And the next step is about print management. It's not just print buying, it's not just print procurement. There's a whole lot deal about print management, which Eugene Cora brings on the table. I'm going to introduce Eugene Cora. He's an Argentinian-born gentleman, lives in Australia. He's a citizen of Mumbai, honorary citizen of Mumbai. He loves Mumbai very much. He's married and has 2 daughters. He's worked with a multinational for 10 years. He's an engineer and been a commercial director with and a brand manager too. He's been a strategy consultant in Asia and a supply chain specialist and a marketing specialist. He's worked in the US, Europe, and China, and he then founded Ergo Asia for the last 10 years, and it's the largest print management company in Asia. It's heavily on technology and developing new processes. He loves India, he loves Indian food, he loves Indian people, and he's crazy about cricket, but he's more crazy and more happy when Australia wins for some reason. So I hand you over Mr. Eugene Cora. Give him a big hand, please.
I hope you can hear me there. And if I get a question as to why Ricky Ponting broke a television set, I am not an Australian. All right, firstly, just a big thank you to Fred and the rest of the BMPA team. It's in many ways, I get asked, are you part of the print industry, are you not? And hopefully this presentation will partly give you some perspectives on my answer to that. But as he mentioned, that I have a dear love of the way the India country and the India people work. And no doubt most of you guys have seen, and girls, have seen the movie. And you remember that there were what appeared to be 3 boys that appeared to all be heading in the same direction, all doing an engineering qualification. But the reality is that as the story evolved, they were all chasing excellence and pursuit in fairly different ways. And you know, in many ways, I guess I'm probably going to talk about three groups. I'm going to talk about printers and how that profession is evolving in the context of print management. I'm going to talk about print management as a business because we don't own any machines, we don't have warehouses, we don't have artwork studios, but somehow we try and create processes that add some value. And I guess the third element of what we'd like to talk about today is that we're all here really for the end customer. Whether it's Kishore in the retail business or in our case, the HULs, or we deal with the IBMs, all these customers ultimately are pursuing their own excellence. They're starting to try and create promotions on Republic Day and sell for the first time. Now we're trying to trail in behind there and meet their needs, which are, in a country like India, is changing very, very radically. So in that context, just bear with me. I'll be as open and as honest, and a lot of you guys have again started to deal with the Ergo group over the last 5 years here in India, and hopefully some of this will resonate. So what is print management? And I have my own sort of definition. I call it a fairly systematic, disciplined manner that you handle an end-to-end marketing process. Okay? Now, in many ways, when we go in many countries, depending on the stage of development, we won't even call ourselves a print manager because we're really workflow process managers. In many cases, our customers, the Australian government hires us and we actually buy all their artwork across 150 designers across the country. And then they say, we would like you to print all this, and they give us the rules in which they would like us to deal with the printers and so on. So it's a systematic discipline of controlling that workflow and the related transactions. Sometimes we will get involved in the order, sometimes we will pay the printers, and for that reason, it's the whole aim is to just control that end-to-end in a very efficient fashion, particularly for the very large customers. I guess the opportunity for you, print management is coming. There is no doubt about that. Every market in the world has an element. That doesn't mean that companies like Ergo are doing print management. What it means is that the big corporates and the companies, as they develop and they get more organised, they will have print management centres themselves. Okay, and you will be dealing with them in a very different way than having that relationship with that brand manager and that marketing manager. So knowing how the model works and knowing how to enter it and how to connect and how to get the most out of it is no different to what you do today when you're chasing a specific customer. Okay, so that's the offer from that point of view. Just to elaborate, to give you a sense of where the information and the things I'm presenting today come from, the Ergo Group is privately owned. We operate across sort of 6 major territories in Asia. The volume statistics, we handle direct sort of purchases is sort of heading up towards the sort of 300 million US now. Through our technology, we're in the billions now. We process very, very high volumes of transactions. That's not just orders, but getting quotes, getting proposals for campaigns back out. Digital assets, we're now integrating the whole digital asset stream. So the days of burning a disk and putting it on a courier, just doesn't work anymore, particularly when you have to get product out in the eastern states. So you have to send a file out to a Kolkata printer and then push it on and personalise it. So digital assets become quite important for us. Again, we handle many millions. We connect all the parties. Our job is to get out of the way. Some people think the opposite. They believe that we are there to sort of marshal all the work. The reality is that we try and get out of the way, because the more we get in the way, we do slow it down. So we connect a lot of parties. We have somewhere between the sort of 5,000 and 10,000 users at any one time connected. Most of those will either be marketing people putting in briefs, or it could be warehouses letting us know that product has arrived. We deal obviously with printers, retail display manufacturers, warehouses around the world and around the countries. And obviously we have an Asia reach, print in many languages and so on. So that's a little bit about where the source of the experience comes from. So what I'd like to do today is just maybe sort of parcel it up into 3 or 4 areas, and I'll travel through these fairly quickly. As we said, everything that we do gets driven by the corporates. Okay, we generally work for very large companies. For those of you that don't know us here in India, I guess out of the sort of 5, 6 major groups would include Hindustan Lever is our oldest customer here in India. We now do all their marketing print in all their modern trade and general trade. Been doing that for just under 4 years now. The L'Oreals, Marico, IBM we do in all of Asia. In fact, for Unilever and L'Oreal we do in many countries as well. Eureka Forbes, we now handle a lot of their packaging, a lot of their marketing. So these types of clients start to exhibit a certain characteristic, and this is where it's evolving. You're not going to see the very small companies do this yet, but it will start from the top down. So they tend to be companies that have usually a global or national reach. They generally have some sort of complexity in terms of where the artwork is being produced and the variety of standards and coding systems and so on. They typically have, like your Vodafones and your Airtels and these companies that are looking to turn around jobs in ridiculous timescales. They have delivery schedules and complexity in getting that product out there. The retail groups, the growth of modern trade. We deal with some of the largest retailers in Asia now, and they have very serious competitive campaigns that require this. When there is a rapid industry change, like is happening again back to telecom in India, where they're acquiring subscribers and customers at a very fantastic rate, again, you have to push in behind to try and support that. And those that have very broad needs, the average retailer around the world now has tens of millions in catalogues. They have tens of millions in regular magazines. They have the point of sale. They have many other elements that run through. So the companies that sort of exhibit that sort of profile will probably be the first that will get organised, either internally or with an external company. Now, when you look at how those companies operate, sometimes there is quite a simplistic view about how the jobs actually get. So most processes that you're aware of, somebody in marketing or in product development or in trade marketing goes to a designer and gives them a brief. And then the designer, gets somebody in procurement involved to go and get a quote. The printer gets it and goes, oh, that's incomplete. They go back and forth, right? They may do that many times, and then just when it's on the press, someone will make some changes. The reality is that that's the view that you probably see. The reality is that inside these companies, we have a spaghetti of workflow that has a complexity that they cannot keep up with. Okay, you've got advertising, you've got people, approving campaigns, legal elements of those. You've got warehouses and kitting warehouses that need to know what product to kit where and how to split statewide or language-wise and so on. Now, that is currently in most companies here in India sitting in Excel spreadsheets, in bits of paper, in voicemails. And the reality is when someone tries to answer questions around where is the job, when is it going to be delivered, what version am I working with, and so on. All these questions, for somebody that does 500 campaigns a year, they probably don't need any complexity. When you're dealing with a HUL or an IBM across Asia and they've got, doing in the order of, 30 to 50,000 campaigns, there's a huge inefficiency. I've seen the same product being created 4 and 5 times in 4 and 5 countries for no reason at all, simply because they don't have a system of coding the artwork and sharing it. So what we try and solve is that. And again, if you wait, give me a few minutes, you'll see how we try and put some order into this. But the reality is when we first go in, we rarely get hired in and say, okay, I want you to start. We say, no, hang on, let's go and have a look. And we'll walk through we'll walk through the company and understand what they're doing. We did this here in India for some of these companies 4 and 5 years ago. Typically what we find, the left-hand side, the things that they tend to be happy with, primarily they tend to be happy with the printers. They believe that you guys are probably holding them together. The service level is fantastic. And that's the first thing they say to us. These guys have been working with us for 20 years. Whatever you do, just make sure that they are, they understand what's happening, take them on the journey and let them go through. They're also usually pretty happy about the brand compliance because typically, again, the printers have done a pretty good job to get all the colour management and all the colour profiling right. So on the right-hand side, it's pretty evident as soon as we say, okay, well, what are you printing? Typically, they can't provide that information. They have no idea. They have an SAP system that says, Republic Day campaign, and they really can't tell you anymore. So if you want to say, well, what types of stocks are you using? Should we be gang running this? Should we use some of the bigger printers in Hyderabad or Mumbai or whatever? They can't even tell you that information. So the transaction efficiency is very, very poor. The printer selection, most of the printer selections are made almost on a knowledge of who's been helping them. But most of us know that we are doing, and you guys are doing work that you probably shouldn't be doing. Either because, maybe you don't have those capabilities, and that's the selection process is quite inefficient. So the estimation gentleman that went through the last presentation, again, a lot of those efficiencies are underpinned by making sure we're putting the right jobs on the right presses at the right time. So file standards and specs. So if we go into a little bit more detail of what we actually find, file standards are usually rubbish. Okay, they've usually been imposed unilaterally by a variety of agencies. And again, let's think about these retail and telecom groups. They're probably using, some of them have got it rationalised, but most of them would probably use 20 or 30, 50 different sources of artwork, which means that file and print-ready files are arriving in all sorts of formats. So that no one knows whether they can reuse a picture, there's no copyright, there's no asset control, and so on. The specifications, again, there is quite inconsistent control of the specification. And probably the two most important ones out of those tend to be, there is little coding of any kind. Okay, so if I walk into a retail store and I look at the quality is somewhat less than what I'd expect my brand to have, it's probably near impossible for me to actually track where that product was actually produced. It's probably impossible to do that in many companies in India today. So the coding system. And finally, most of the large companies have now made commitments about carbon footprint reductions and so on and so on. And they can't, you guys are responsible for many of that. Most people wouldn't know what a life cycle analysis and how to measure that. So those elements are quite important. The allocation of work is fairly evident. And the transaction disciplines, I mean, how many, in the last month, how many of you people has commenced a job without an official order from the client? Hands up. How many has commenced a job without an official order from the client? Most of us. I only see a few hands, so maybe we're all a little bit embarrassed by it, but that's just not appropriate. Okay? Sooner or later, the size of the Indian economy is going to be such that you need to maintain. We all hate chasing that payment. We all hate chasing that brand manager sometime later to get that payment. So, it's just, and yes, the printers generally are getting paid, particularly from the big end of town, but it tends to be slow. It tends to be you almost have to send somebody in there to do that. So they're the sort of issues we're trying to solve. So let's talk about the models now. So we know roughly what we're finding in the companies. Let's now talk about print management, because print management can actually be done by a printer. Print management can be done by an independent company like Ergo. Print management can be done by an agency or even a corporate themselves. So this has been the evolution. I'm not saying that this is how it's going to evolve here. This is just our experience in the various markets. So before the printers had a lot of direct contact, they tended to be dominated by design agencies. Okay, back in probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, we experienced that in many of the countries. So the agencies had the greater relationship with the campaign people and the marketing and advertising guys, and for that reason they then tended to end up with the order for the print, which then they came to you guys, and so on. It then evolved into the printers obviously having a direct involvement, which then meant that you guys could provide a greater service. Then we saw the emergence of print brokers around the territories. Now sometimes they're called brokers, you guys call them canvassers, and various different names. And most people do that because they want to get a bit more quoting, maybe try and reduce the price a little. Okay, but those people typically tend to be 1, 2 or 3 persons working together, not a lot of infrastructure, so they can't necessarily solve problems of handling assets in an efficient way, but they can maybe get a few more prices. And then we saw sort of the print management industry come in. And the early print managers had a very, very serious focus on procurement. Okay, so it was all about, let's get 3 quotes, let's get 5 quotes, let's get whatever. Okay. And that pretty much lasted, and depending on the country, and I don't know which stages it is in all of India, but that tends to last maybe 5, 6, 7 years, and then it tends to die because people know that you can't sustain that, you guys haven't got those sort of margins. So then it moves to more collaboration, where there's more focus on the workflow. Okay? And that's probably where we like to pitch our business, and that's why, as Freddie said, we've invested quite heavily. Some of the applications that we use today, the Noosh technology is the largest print management platform in the world, and that's had $100 million US invested in it in about 15 years. So you're now talking about a workflow control tool that is available to these corporates. So the model has evolved. So as we said earlier, let's not confuse sort of the procurement focus where all you're worried about is getting a spec, getting some prices, and placing an order, to sort of the full breadth print management. So what does that actually mean? It means that we're actually very interested to be talking to the 70 brand managers at HUL sitting there at Andheri, okay, who are thinking about a campaign 3 and 4 months. Okay. When we arrived here, the process to go from the initiation of a campaign through to delivery, I think for general trade for Hindustan, where is Ranga? What was that, 5 days, Ranga? 5, 6 days, something ridiculous that we could not handle, and the printers were doing stupid hours, doing overnight stuff, and we're all wasting money. I think we've now got it back to a control level where effectively the time that they're briefing the job to the time you guys are delivering it to Doshi Logistics out here at Lower Parel is probably something around the 3-week period. Now that took a lot of change management, it took a lot of organisation, but it meant that you get involved very early, You set some standards. In the old days, they used to grab an Excel spreadsheet. The Excel spreadsheets would fly around. Now they go onto an online system on their intranet. They pick large posters. Those large posters have got standard specifications. And then all of that almost goes through to you guys for pricing, okay, in a very standard way right through. Now, we haven't pushed right through to the first layer of go-downs and the distribution in subsequent regions of India, but it is coming, and that's the visibility that's going to be possible. So that's what we would call a full breadth print management, hopefully with some collaboration. So these people are chasing these models because primarily it gets built around how they operate. And there's no doubt that an IBM Asia works very differently than a Unilever here, as does Marico and Eureka Forbes. So they want something tailored. The second thing is they want to be able to see. They make many promises about environmental and cost reductions and lead time reduction. In most cases, they can't even tell how quickly they're approving a proof. So they want sort of process control at that level, okay? And finally, they do have, again, made commitments, like most big corporates, that they want good transparency, making sure people are placing orders in an objective way and doing the right things by shareholders. So that transparency, and for these reasons, that's why these models are sort of coming through. So how does it actually work? So services, the first thing we do is we set some scope of services. Most print managers will typically get involved in storing the artwork. Okay, so as artwork gets produced, there'll be a set of standards, the agency will load it, and then the printer that gets allocated the job will actually pull it right through. From an artwork perspective, if there are minor changes to happen, hopefully all of that happens before it gets to the printer. The services may include packaging, but it's not as prominent in the packaging area as it is for marketing. Then obviously there's a print workflow control. The self-service side, there are a lot of applications that we're putting in now where really no individuals are involved. They're actually customizing, and I can't show you the applications today, but there's a lot of local area marketing tools being done to actually make sure that the regions are creating their own campaigns. We typically get involved in a lot of, particularly with retailers and FMCGs, to make sure that the print that goes on the floor stand units or the hanging units and so on get put on. The suppliers in these models tend to be quite integral. So the first thing that tends to happen, and it really gets driven by the clients, we ask them immediately, would you like to work with the incumbents and the printers you've been dealing with, or would you like us to make recommendations? And they basically set the rules for us. Almost, I would suggest that 9 out of 10 will immediately say, I want my incumbent printers to make sure that they service. Where you can then demonstrate that really work has been done, maybe subcontracted by the printers that we have because they don't have the capabilities, then we'll make a recommendation. So very respectful. The second thing that gets done is, for the first time, we try and understand what you have in your capabilities. So what types of presses, what types of pre-press equipment, finishing, where are you located? So for example, take HUL again. Okay, we came in here and they said, I think they had the foods business in Bangalore. They had the personal products business in Mumbai, so they had printers in the two regions, Karnataka and Maharashtra. They then said everybody's moving to Mumbai, so we shifted a lot of the printing to Mumbai. Now in the last year, they've said our business is growing too fast and we need faster response to the market because we want to be 2.5 times as big in another 3 or 4 years, I think they said. And we now want you to form 4 hubs. So we've got a hub sort of formed out of West Bengal, another one out of Hyderabad, another one out of Delhi. Now that has all evolved in that since we've commenced. So it's contracted it to Mumbai, now come back. So needing a good understanding of the capability is very important. So when we do come and ask you, please let us know what presses you have. Where are they? Do you have a sister unit in another state? Let us know because we can connect you very quickly. We're now obliged, almost all these large companies ask us what environmental systems do these printers have. And let's start consistent with how the industry's going. Let's encourage them and give them special positions inside, preferential positions if they start to invest in these things. Okay, we've got to do it at a pace that you guys can afford it. Okay, we can't go too fast, and that's our job, which, that's why we do try and stay close to what you're doing here. All contractually engaged, and most of us, I think we've only had one or two episodes of sort of poor payments when we are handling the payments. For you guys, just so you're aware, our technologies are such that when an order is placed, you're accepting it online, and then you submit your invoice online. The moment that order gets closed, it automatically goes to the banking system and gets dated as per the contract with you. So there is no discretion about when that money gets released. Okay, we've only had one incident here when HUL was changing sort of systems, and they again were unable to sort of keep the funds flowing. But for the supplier role is quite important in all of this. So from a day-to-day operations, and again, some of you guys, we have all these models run with people on site. So for those, some of you guys may know our people, they sit inside Andedi, or it could be the Marathon building for Eureka, or it could be the IBM building in Bangalore. We have our people, an on-site print management centre. So they are specialists. Some come from your background, some come from a pre-press, some come from an agency background. They will be responsible for setting the standards. So if you want to engage well, understand what is it that they're setting the standards for, so you can set up your own machinery accordingly. Connectivity, everything will be done online. We sort of discourage emails and faxes because it means that we can't really report on anything, okay? So there's a lot of heavy reliance on that. And the other thing that's not well understood is I think a lot of people's first experience is, well, I'm bidding for work, I'm not winning, or I'm bidding, how many am I bidding for, okay? Basically, we set up the procurement in accordance with what the procurement departments tell us, okay? So let me give you an example. The Australian government says every printer in the state that the job is, destined for should be invited, because you guys know the efficiencies of running one job after another when they're all the same stock and they're all, the same format. So the benefits of gang running are well known. So we can come up with term contracts. So that's the reality of this. It doesn't all have to be bid, but we are restrained by what the company requests us to do. So the technology that you'll see, people will log on there, they'll put in a brief. So even the brand managers have to go on the system to do that. We'll then push it through, get you guys to quote, close the orders, and pretty soon we'll actually have the warehouses actually receiving the product. So you'll have sort of full end-to-end visibility. So again, if you get an opportunity or you'd like to do that, I'd be more than happy to show you some of that. The other thing that's happening is, and you need to be very, very aware, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you guys. Most of these companies we've just rattled off, as Kishore just mentioned, I think he was talking about some of the Indian companies going to Africa, and well, you've got both. You've got some of the Indian companies going out, but you've also got the multinationals coming in, okay? Most of these customers that we have here are in multiple countries. They are now sitting there going, okay, so I'm launching a new product in Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, India, Bangladesh. So should I be printing all this in one location? All locations? Okay. We run Unilever for, say, six, 7 countries. We actually do it all on the same platform. The spec gets loaded, so it's very easy for us to say, let's get quotes locally, and then let's see. And all I can tell you, that our early experience is that the competitiveness of this market is tremendous. Okay? So if we can get that aspect of it working well, the opportunity is very, very high. But we've got hubs right through the region. The other thing that you should be aware is that these multinationals aren't considering the world. The way that they're organised is they have an Asia AMET block, they have a Europe block, they have an Americas block. And either the brand teams, the procurement teams tend to be organised like that, which means that they'll be quite happy to make an Asia-wide decision. But it's very unlikely that they're going to make a big global decision all in one. So that's something you need to understand on how they're organised. So I like this one out of the movie when the fellow in the wheelchair walked up to the assessment committee, and he didn't like, or he thought that the assessors weren't going to like his answer. And I think a lot of it applies here. You guys need to keep a very cool head and very clear head about print management, okay? We can't make you competitive. We are trying to apply rules from our clients, but it's very important that you guys keep very clear, great line of communication to us. Tell us what's working, what's not. And if that happens, then you start to get all sorts of opportunities. This one is a very big one, okay? We are already, when I say category 1, 2, 3, 4, there were categories of jobs, whether it be brochure work, whether it be high-scale magazine work for around the region. Almost every time we get a prize for anything, and we've got units in Southern Asia and in Shanghai, and units in various, you guys come out on top. So from a cost competitiveness, you can probably even increase your margins and still win this sort of work. Secondly is you need to seek a really good understanding of what these customers are aiming to do. Make sure you're focused, don't try and win too much work that really is outside your zone. Adopt a mentality of process. Once you connect to the technology and the teams put you on the panel, then that work will come to you. You don't need to organise too much. And finally, just make sure that you get tremendous information. The systems that we use have very, very good information, and you should demand it. So make sure you answer questions about how you're servicing the print management channel. If you quote it in the same way as you would any other job, you will probably underdo it because the volume of work will be very high and the efficiency which will present files and quotations will change. So a couple of questions for you to consider. I guess I'll finish off on a final one here. And again, it's in many ways, it's like walking into the lion's den, coming into the room full of printers, because there is such mixed views about these people that get in the middle. But I do thank you for being open to what we have to say. The industry's been impacted, not, as I said, by the clients, by what we're doing. You do need to understand the roles, okay? It's a little different. Take the time. Please ask us and we'll take you through. I've got 4 or 5 of the guys up here. For those of you guys that haven't met them, just put your hands up there. Ranga, Amal, Prashant, and I think Shashank's out there somewhere as well. So please approach me and I'll introduce you. Seek some understanding and you'll find that you will get a lot more. So a final thank you. I think it's you guys are in a wonderful area. Most print markets such as Australia are now flat, okay? So they've got the same problems that you have on margins, but they're not growing anywhere. You guys are in an opportunity that I think with some nudging understanding you are going to control. So thank you very much, and thank you to everybody.
Hello. We have time for quick questions. Anybody have any questions? Iqbal?
Eugene, we went through your presentation. Now, the general fear that all printers have, with print management companies especially, is that with clients there is a one-to-one, there is a lot of background which goes 10 years, 20 years a printer has. But with print management companies and whatever we heard, we generally realized that it's price-driven. There is no emphasis given to your creativity or to your input or your background or your special qualification which you've been handling your customer for a little while. So though you do say that the incumbent or the regular printers are given first preference, we would still be competing on price, or would we be competing on something else beyond that?
Thank you for the question. I'll answer to several parts of it. Firstly, the first one is if you go into any of our clients today in India, you will find that we actually literally have high quality segments, sometimes tier 1 quality, tier 2 quality, tier 3 quality. We will do that in our technology. So do we differentiate those panels? Absolutely. Okay, so I think HUL's running across the country, I don't know, probably 40, 50 printers, I guess, Ranga. Okay, they would all be in their own panels. We know the web guys, we know the long run guys, we know the various elements of that. That's number one. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say that I've got 3 wonderful printers from Bombay here, and we know that all 3 of them can do a wonderful job on this high quality piece that's, for the fashion festival. Okay? Now, once I know that all 3 can produce that perfectly, what should I do then? And that's the dilemma that we get into. Okay, once we've categorized them and they've got that wonderful setup, we've walked through there, they're environmentally accredited, there's nothing less to differentiate that, and they ask us to get 2 or 3 prices, I have to do that. And that's the obligation that I have for them. So we have to be responsible to make sure your great operation is not being compared with a second rate or third rate. So that's our job. If you don't think that's happening, by all means, I definitely want to know about it.
One question there from the lady there. One. We got time, so. Can we have a mic there for the lady? Thank you. Milap, you're next.
Good afternoon. Actually, it's related to Mr. Iqbal's question. Does this model reduce the loyalty of the printers towards the client because it's an indirect relationship? So does the direct relationship of the vendor affect with the client? Does it suffer? Because you're giving specialty jobs to different printers based on different factors like cost and timeline and stuff like that. Okay. So does our commitment, our loyalty, our relationship suffer?
I don't believe it does, but I have seen print managers, and we're not the only ones out there. I have seen print managers that will actually pick up your product, receive your product, or they'll actually tell you to pack the product in boxes that don't have your name on it because they don't want the customer to know who you are because they figure that by doing that, we think that's rubbish. Our job is to actually understand if you have a new investment, our guys will be told, in fact, isn't our primary comment that we get at every account review, you know, I want to increase the innovation. I want you to bring 3 and 4 printers up here at the next time we meet. Our job is to connect. And if you have some wonderful innovation, right?
What if everyone has the same innovation?
Well,
what if
it's not innovation?
Then it just cost. It just cost.
I guess it does become commodity. You've just defined it yourself. Once you do get to that, and I guess we're always chasing that. We have the same issue. Once my competitor has the same, so hopefully we're already thinking about the second or third. But our job is definitely not to grab your innovation, show it with all the printers. It's to grab your innovation, connect you. We think that here are the 4 or 5 or 10 brands that could use it. Let's organise a meeting and you can tell them direct. Simple as that. And you'll be in a panel by yourself because you're the only one that can do that. So that's our job, and I can tell you that our customers are going innovation, innovation. Now, our job is to connect. So I hope that helps a little.
Thank you. Thank you.
Milap had a question. Can you have the mic there?
Hi, my name is Milap. A question that you said this whole process is going to be top-down. Right now, a lot of big companies are using this process. Do you see this going down the tier to medium and other companies using this kind of services?
I personally don't think it will.
Okay.
I think this requires a threshold level of complexity. Otherwise, you know, it does cost money to put our people, it costs money to put technology. It costs an effort to change the behaviours. I think there is marginal benefit when you're quite contained or your product set is so straightforward. So I don't believe it'll be the case.
So it'll be limited to the bigger guys who are present globally or in multiple countries?
Or even the large national Indian companies. I think you're probably talking the sort of top 50, top 100 is where it will go. If you look at the more developed print management markets, probably the UK, Europe, parts of Europe, print management hasn't really filtered beyond the sort of, below the sort of 300 million US type company. So I don't think it will. I think there's too much growth at the top end.
Any more questions?
Okay.
Yes, I think some more questions on this side. Can we have the mic here?
Yeah. Going through a presentation, what we found that your model mostly works on cost savings for the multinationals and bringing a kind of a systematic discipline of control marketing, right?
Right.
Yeah. My question is that most of the MNCs have got very limited print budgets compared to their advertising budgets, which they use for their television media, print media, you know?
Yes.
So how does the cost savings, how would you excite a CFO or a chairman, okay, to go for a print model like yours?
I didn't understand the connection to your final statement.
if I were to open up my own print management company,
Yes.
how would I excite the chief financial officer or the chairman to go for a print model company like Ergo Asia? What would excite them, basically, to go for this?
No, good question. What tends to hit? I don't believe that it is the same pitch. I think there is a group that are either under cost pressures that is just quick cost reduction. That group does exist. Okay, I'm not going to get away from that. You guys face them today, and we face them. I think there is then, as again Kishore mentioned, there are some that are doing quite, extended, scenario planning. Okay, they get it. They know that life here in India will require a different way to manage it. And those people just get it. They just know. In fact, they would be quite happy to pay more tomorrow. Some of the telcos, most of those people don't care about the cost. They just want if you can half the time, you'll probably go. So it varies by situation. But again, for us, if that's what they want to do, they set the rules on how we procure anyway. But
last question, please.
Yeah.
As a print management company, for your client, do you have any system to see the specifications are followed by a printer?
So you mean a quality checking procedure?
Everything. Stock, quality, service. Service is noticeable.
Excellent. Okay, no, good question.
Because these are the fields where there is a difference.
Okay,
so if you are playing any important role, that will be the great thing for the industry.
Okay.
To bring everybody on the same battlefield or same level.
No, very good question, and I can assure you hand on heart that we have actually ejected several printers here in India. They will not deal with Ergo anymore, and that's because they've been caught out. So we have done that. Now, we work with our customers. A lot of the times you guys grab a product or you get an order and it gets delivered to 50 locations around the country, right? How do you quality control that? It's near impossible unless I come to your shop and say, show me, let's open a few boxes and sample it. So we put in procedures in there. In some cases, and again we've done this with H2L, where they will actually deliver product into central locations here in Lower Parel. That does get sampled. You may or may not know that. And those results actually go back in the system. So whether it's short count, whether it's poor samples, poor packaging, it's actually in the system. We just let the facts take care of themselves. So I hope we do that job. It is a difficult one to capture all the information, particularly in a country such as this, but we're getting there slowly.
Sometimes we think that the print buyer sometimes doesn't know what he's buying. That's what the impression what we get. So is there in that area print management company helps client to understand what they're buying?
From a spec point of view, do you mean?
Ask him after.
Paper substitution.
Paper substitution, correct. So do you have the right testing procedures for it and so on. So our job is to basically, because of the larger size of the companies require huge efficiencies, you do have to be very serious about, let's say, the paper specification, particularly if you want to gang run. I think we did one job a year and a half ago where we gang run 69 jobs together, okay, from brand managers that didn't even know that the jobs were being gang run. Okay, now that could only happen because we set some standards. Now, have we got all the procedures in every corner of India on testing substitution? The answer is no. Are we sampling? Probably 70 to 80% for most of the customers today, yes. But there will be more to come because of the paper accounts. You guys, for every 1,000 tonnes, I think we purchase some of our customers here up to, how many thousand tonnes, Ranga? 10,000 tonnes, I think, in some of our clients. And the paper deals and the paper supply chains have been studied a little bit more. In certain markets, you can trace it right through. Here, we can't do that just yet, from the mills through the merchants, because it's a little bit cloudy.
Eugene, thank you very much. We're running out of time, sorry, but anybody has more questions for Eugene, he's going to be available outside. May I call upon Dave Nair to felicitate Eugene, Cora. Thank you very much for the wonderful discourse. Thank you.